Hi everyone, this is two-time World Poker Tour champion Jonathan Little, and I want to tell you about my training site, pokercoaching.com. Poker coaching is the place to be if you want to increase your poker skills and learn to crush the games. It's the only place to quickly increase your win rate with active learning, so you can achieve your full poker potential without having to hire an expensive coach. Right now, podcast listeners can score a free membership by visiting pokercoaching.com/cardplayer and get access to top training tools like our interactive hand quizzes, our 7, 14, and 30-day challenges, and a roster of elite coaches such as Matt Affleck, James Romero, Burt DraftGanger Stevens, Michael Acevedo, and dozens of others. Again, that's pokercoaching.com/cardplayer to get your free membership right now.
By now, you've heard about Global Poker, one of the fastest growing online card rooms available in the US and Canada today. So what's stopping you from trying it out? Global Poker is a safe and secure social poker site that uses their own patented sweepstakes model. Signing up is easy. You can use Google, Facebook, or just an email address. You can always play for free on Global Poker, but you can also buy gold coins for additional play, which will earn sweeps coins that can be redeemed for real cash to a bank account, Skrill account, or even as a gift card. Get a free 5,000 gold coins when you sign up right now at globalpoker.com.
Poker Stories is an audio series that features casual interviews with some of the game's best players and personalities. Each episode highlights a well-known figure in the poker world and dives deep into their favorite tales both on and off the feld.
Hello and welcome to Poker Stories, a podcast brought to you by Card Player, the poker authority, and hosted by me, Julio Rodriguez. This is episode number 145, featuring Lara Eisenberg. Now, Lara has been impressing many players on the circuit over the last few years with her play. In 2019, she won a WSOP Circuit ring, and then in 2021, she took down the Ladies Championship event at the World Series of Poker for her first bracelet and a six-figure score. Then in December of last year, she managed to make it to heads-up play out of a huge field of 5,430 in the WPT Prime World Championship event, banking $481,000 for her deep run. That's a lot of success for someone who doesn't even play all that often. Lara's poker schedule is limited by the fact that she has a day job running her own radiology practice. And poker is also not her only interest. Lara spent her time in college as a bit of a pool hall shark. And then she turned her attention to competitive skydiving, where she holds a world record, which you'll hear all about in this interview. Anyway, that is enough intro. Here is my conversation with Lara Eisenberg. I'm here with Lara Eisenberg. Lara, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great. You're fresh out of the Bahamas?
Yeah, not for poker, but just there for a family trip. It was pretty awesome. So beautiful.
Okay. I was about to say, a lot of the poker world made their way over there for some events.
Yeah, that's just getting started.
Huh?
No. Well, we actually played a little family poker, completely different game, but good fun.
Was there a lot of family poker growing up?
Not at all. No, I didn't start playing poker until I was in my 30s. I'd never played poker at all until I saw it on TV. And,
wow.
Yeah, I was like a PC gamer, and then I happened to catch a commercial for probably Poker Stars or whatever was happening back then, Full Tilt, and I was like, whoa, people are playing games for money on the internet? Let me learn how to do that. So I started learning how to play poker for that reason.
I want to get to that story, but first, what's this family game you guys play? Is it Hold'em or is it?
Oh yeah, we were just playing some fun, just a goofy Hold'em, something to do at night.
All right, so you've infected the whole family, huh? They've all caught the bug.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go back. Did you grow up in Silver Spring, Maryland?
No, I grew up in Ohio, and then went to college and med school in Milwaukee, and then actually went to North Carolina for my medical training, and then moved up to Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. So you're a little bit all over the place. Okay, so tell me about growing up in Ohio. How long were you there, and what were your interests? What were you getting into?
Sure. So I grew up in northern Ohio in a town called Elyria, and It was just, I was just there till I was 18. We were in a small-ish town of like 60,000 people. And, so not a whole lot to tell from back then. I was never like particularly good at sports or anything like that. So I was in band and that kind of stuff.
Oh, what
But
instrument did you play?
I played clarinet, which is a really
Clarinet.
nasty instrument until you get half decent at it.
Yeah, there's a steep learning curve on that one.
For sure.
So were you gaming back then, or was that later?
I'm 54, so yeah, so I was around as computers were evolving, essentially. So like I was around for the early days that were text-based games, and then, like multi-user online groups that were text-based and that kind of goofy stuff. And graphics were all evolving. So like I was into it kind of from the beginning.
I'm only 38, but I was there for Oregon Trail. So
there you go.
What I remember.
Yeah, no, there was Zork and Bard's Tale and a bunch of like goofy early games where we were mapping stuff on graph paper, like super nerds.
You were an early adopter then.
Yes. And
were you always technically minded?
I guess so. I mean, like there wasn't much to be technically minded about until computers really became like home computers became a thing. But that like right away it was like, oh wow, you can disappear into a whole other world with computer games, and I like that.
So was the plan to go to the big city, Milwaukee, and study medicine right away, or did you discover that while you were there?
No, I always wanted to be a doc, and but like I wasn't sure where I was going to go, and then they had just started these things where you could do college and med school in either 6 years or 7 years, and so I matched into a program in Milwaukee that was 7 years, so you cut out a year, and I started out in surgery after med school and did a year of surgery, realized that wasn't for me, switched to radiology, and that was 4 years of radiology plus a year of fellowship down in North Carolina, and then I moved up to the DC area.
Oh, it's a lot of schooling, that's for sure. You got to be in it. What was it about surgery that didn't click for you? Was there like an incident or?
No, it's just mainly the lifestyle. So I was very like my main interest was gastroenterology kind of stuff. So like, and that lifestyle in surgery is pretty rough. So whereas in radiology, like we work very intensely when we work, but you're kind of on when you're on and you're off when you're off, and you're not just sort of on call all the time. And it's just a much better lifestyle.
Like a firefighter.
Yeah, exactly. A little less risk, but yeah.
Okay, so for those who are ignorant like me and Googling what does a radiologist do early this morning, essentially you're an expert at taking pictures of the insides of people's bodies and interpreting them.
We don't take them, right? So there's technologists who do the acquisition. So if you break your ankle and you go to the hospital, there'll be an X-ray tech who's the one who takes the pictures and then turns them in to be read. If you get a CAT scan or an MRI or an ultrasound, it's a tech or a person who does the acquisition of the images, and then the radiologist is the one who's reading all of the studies and interpreting them and getting the results to the other physicians.
Right, so. You're the one in the TV show who's holding it up to the light.
No, that's the actor who's holding the X-ray up backwards. Uniformly, right. They're holding it up backwards, and so I'll be sitting there with my wife. I'm like, it's the dumbest, and she's like, I know, but. Yeah.
Oh, it's so tilting. I feel the same way whenever I watch like any poker scene in any TV show ever.
They always make some dumb statement. You're just like, really?
Yeah, they're not even playing for table stakes or
5 of a kind.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Yeah, it can be cringy, but yeah. That's the opening shot of Scrubs. I think they got the thing backwards.
They always have it up backwards, or they make a silly statement about something, going to the operating room. That's something that gets done in radiology or whatever. But it's better not to know sometimes.
Were you good at school?
Yeah, you don't kind of get through med school unless you're decent at school.
Well, how bad do you want it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, honestly, I don't think that you have to be incredibly smart to get through med school. You have to just be willing to do the work. I mean, honestly, I think that that's true about most things. There's people that are naturally, gifted in certain ways. Some people might have really great memories, or they might have this and that. But the person who's willing to just put their head down and do the hard work the most is going to be the one that usually does, either as well or better.
Right, but it's not like you were just studying all the time. What's this about skydiving while you were in med school?
Well, that was after med school.
Okay.
Actually, when I was in college and med school, I used to be a competitive pool player. So that was my outlet back then.
Oh,
and
you're not you, Daniel Negreanu, Nick Schulman.
That makes sense. I didn't know that about Nick. But yeah, no, I
Nick's
used
a
to play.
shark. Nick and John Hennigan.
Nice.
Run some tables for sure.
Yeah, so I used to play a lot in college mainly, and then in med school I didn't really have as much time. And I always knew I was going to skydive, but I knew I didn't have the time or money when I was a student, so I waited till I was a resident, and I had no time but a little tiny bit of money.
Hold on, before we get to skydiving, tell me more about these billiard days. Were you hustling people?
Yeah, I mean there was a little bit of that. Like I didn't have much money to be gambling with back then, but in general, like people would play for small amounts of money, and that was great. So that was a way to make a little extra money. And then I played collegiate competition. So I came in I think fourth or third a couple years in a row at the collegiate nationals for billiards when I was in school. And that was fun. But around Milwaukee, pool is super popular because it's an indoor activity that you can do, even when the weather's crappy. And so I was on a guys' pool league, and I was the first woman in Milwaukee to be on a men's pool league, and that caused a few waves, but it was really fun.
Breaking barriers.
Yeah.
You got to imagine that somebody who wants to be a surgeon, at least at that time, would also be good at billiards because got to have those steady hands, right?
Hand-eye coordination for sure is definitely helpful.
That's great. Okay, so you're done with med school, and then all of a sudden somebody invites you skydiving?
No, actually, I mean, I just always knew I was going to do it. And what happened was somebody I knew, maybe one of the nurses when I was an intern, said they knew there was some guy who was an anesthesia resident who wanted to go skydiving, and would I go on a blind date? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So I met this guy on a blind date to go skydiving. And the skydiving was a keeper, the guy not so much. But, so that's how it started.
What was the first experience like? I'm assuming you have to go with the instructor on that one, right?
Yeah, I did a tandem. There's you can do AFF, accelerated free fall, where you have to go through the whole ground school, so you're able to handle a parachute emergency if it happens and all that stuff. Or you can just go do a tandem where they're dealing with all of that, and you're more or less along for the ride. And so that's what I did. And it's just, I mean, it's such a trip. Your awareness is so little. You leave the airplane and there's just this rush of cold air and crazy, and you can see the world in 3D, and you're flying, and then there's a video person and you're smiling and you're waving, and then suddenly there's a parachute, and actually they let us pull the ripcord, but and then being under the parachute was really neat, and immediately I just wanted to go back up and do it again, and then so I just started I started jumping a whole bunch then. So.
There was no shaky knees on the way up the first time?
It's funny. Well, it's funny. I was less nervous the first time than the second time. And the reason was that the first time our whole plane was all tandems, and I was the first, my instructor and I were the first ones out. And so when you're actually the one doing it, you don't get this sensation of falling. It's super windy, but you just get this sensation that you leave the airplane and you're flying. The next time I actually did the same day. I went back up. I'm I'm going to do it again. And I went right back up.
The next day?
No, the same day.
The same day? Oh,
yeah,
man.
I went right back up. And this time I was going to be one of the last ones out. And you see all the people in the door, and it's ready, set, go. And it's bam, they're gone. And you're like, holy crap. And that made me nervous.
Yeah.
So
they're just immediately sucked out of a plane.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it looks much more intimidating to watch it than it is to do it.
And then what about the first time you had to do it yourself, like take the step yourself?
Yeah, I mean, by then, I mean, I was still like, you're nervous. So with the program I did, you did 5 tandems, and then you did 4. You did a whole ground school where you learn how to deal with parachute emergencies, and then you have 4 jumps where it's you and one instructor. So they're like holding on to you at first, and then having you learn how to fly and go backwards and forwards and sideways and how to do flips and stuff like that, so that you're like reasonably stable. And and then after those 9 jumps, you can jump with somebody who's not holding you. But just to practice. And that was it. Then you're like still super naive, but you're you're on your way and you're learning as you go.
Have you always been a thrill seeker? Is this what other activities had you been up to?
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, that's obviously the big one, but I've always liked like being in amusement parks and doing all of that kind of stuff. That was always fun. And I eventually skydiving for me became more about an outlet for competition, because I was on different teams competing, and it'll be really hard to explain how that works without being able to show you videos. But yes, but it's very physical, it's very mental, and that got me really on the path of competition again, having not lost that outlet, not playing pool anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was the big competitive outlet for me all the way up until I found pool.
Skydiving competition, in my mind, it's like synchronized swimming.
It kind of is, except it's very physical. So you're flying vertically over people and moving people from here to there, and you're doing it in a timed event, with a video person videoing it, and you have to get through a sequence as fast as you can. And the sequences can be complicated too. Sometimes you're doing mirror images, so you'll go through a sequence in one direction and then it flips you, and you're having to go back through the moves in the other direction, like a mirror image, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's mentally challenging as well as physically challenging. And then it's just being on a team with other people. There's all the challenges that come in around that. That's different with poker. You might have people that you study with and do stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's pretty much a solo event once you're on the felt, and so it's different, kind of like pool in that way.
You talk about this world record that you have?
Yeah, so there's a couple. So we still have the women's world record, which is I think 151 people we did. But the current world record largest formation is 400 people. It's going to be very hard to beat, not because it's so hard to do from a skydiver standpoint. It's hard to get the planes to do it. So
you have to have a lot of planes pretty close to each other.
Well, you either have to have a lot of planes or you have to have really big planes, which is ideal. So we had the Thai government, the King of Thailand. It was the 50th anniversary of his ascendancy to the throne. And so it all got set up as this like royal sky celebration. So we made it so all the colors it looked like the Thai flag unfolded, with the colors and all of that. So he basically just loaned us 5 C-130s to use for 3 weeks. The cost of which, of course, is phenomenal. None of us could afford our share and didn't. We just paid our airfare to get to Thailand and some small amount for the hotel room. And then, we were just there. We were doing 5 jumps a day out of C-130s. And after 13 attempts, we built it. And it was really awesome. It was really amazing. It's the largest thing that's ever been over the Earth.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Crazy life you've lived.
Yeah, it was a really crazy event. I mean, the only regret I have about it was I was in Thailand for 3 weeks, and I didn't get to see that much of Thailand. I got to see one town, Udon Thani, which is a town of about 100,000 people. That's where U.S. Air Base is, and that's where we based ourselves out of. But I had actually set up in Bangkok when we arrived. I had set up this really cool evening cruise with a whole show and dinner and all this stuff. And my plane got delayed. Actually, it was my plane getting from Washington, D.C. to New York that was, of all things, United botched that up. And I maybe missed my plane, so I was stuck for 24 hours. And I missed this whole thing I had set up that these people had fun doing, and another tour I'd set up too. But I got to see some temples and do a tour like that in Bangkok, which was neat. And we got to meet a lot of different people, Thai people, just being in the town for so long, which was really neat. But I need to get back and really see the country more. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, the bird's eye view is nice, but
Yeah,
you got to see it, on foot.
right. Yeah, I think our craziest thing was, the thing with these large formations is that, it's obviously there's some risk involved exiting C-130s, which are going pretty fast. And then there's some risk involved building it, the formation itself. But the biggest risk is figuring out how to get 400 people separated safely so you don't end up with any parachute entanglements, that kind of thing.
Right. You have to eject at different times.
Yeah, so what we do is, you basically have an outer wave of people that leaves at the highest altitude, and then another wave, and then instead of just everybody just scattering and going all every which way, you have these groups. So I led a group of people, like flock of birds, right? And so and so these people would all follow me, and we'd all stick together from 7,000 feet down to 3,000 feet, and then we'd all separate there, and then open up there. So each little flock of birds is going in a completely separate direction as far away as possible.
Right. And, reduces the risk of entanglement and.
Exactly. And my group that I was leading, we were always tracking directly over the city of Udon Thani. So you'd see people sunning themselves by the pool and hanging out and all this crazy stuff. And then you were opening up in a different place every time with not that much time. You're at 2,000 feet. So you fairly quickly have to figure out where you're going to land. And it's in a city, so most of us were landing in the backyard of this school. And then this ambulance would randomly pick us up and take us back to the airbase because we're pretty far away. And on one time, it's whoa, we're in a completely different area. So when we opened up, I'm like, man, I guess, okay, there's a green patch over there. I'll go over there. And when I got closer, I realized there's this huge vertical net. I'm like, what the heck? And I realized it was a driving range. So they have the huge net. So I barely made it over this net and inside this driving range and landed. And one other guy had followed me over there, and the two of us landed there. And then the people, they didn't speak any English, so we're trying to explain, it's we're hangar 57. They're like, I don't know. And they gave us a Coke, and we're drinking a Coke and hanging out. And then some dude shows up in a motorcycle with a sidecar, and they point, get in the motorcycle. And we're like, okay, either we're going to be in the sex slave trade or maybe we'll go somewhere. And the guy drives us around this Thai market, pointing and showing everybody that he's got skydivers in his motorcycle. And then he takes us back and drops us back off at the driving range again. And I'm like, crap.
You thought he was helping, or maybe
I know,
kidnapping,
right?
and he was just showing you off.
And then eventually somebody's like, here, you get in the back of this pickup truck. And I'm like, oh, this is the one. This isn't going to be good. But we hop in anyway, lay down, and then eventually we ended up somehow back at the place. But that was just nuts. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
any scary situations in the air?
There were a lot of scary situations exiting the C-130 in that you were going across in rows of four, and it's a big airplane, so they can't slow down that much. So unlike a regular smaller skydiving plane that can slow down to 90 knots, to keep flying, these things need to be going 130 knots. And so when you go in these rows of four, for a second there's nothing, and then you hit this blast of air, once the plane is no longer blocking the wind, and people get tossed, unless you're perfectly presented to the wind, you can get tossed to the right or to the left and into people. So one guy, if you put your arms out, one guy got a shoulder fracture dislocation from having his arms out and somebody hit him. So I was exiting the airplane, I would just ball up in a little ball and just watch this vortex toilet bowl of people in this carnage down below and try to stay out of it. But we had some accidents. One guy broke his pelvis, had to have a big surgery, and there were some other types of accidents and things that happened. I mean, nobody died in the event, which was good, but obviously. But yeah, I didn't have any close calls personally on that event, which was good because we were kind of far out there.
Man, talk about really diving headfirst into something.
Yeah. Well, you're
bug and you went for it.
Right. Yeah, when you're closing in on something. So when I was one of the people in the back, which is really the front of the C-130. So all these people leave before you. So by the time you leave, the formation that's building is way down below you. And so you have to dive head down at it. So you're going 200 miles an hour at something that's going 120. So you're closing in pretty fast on the thing, and you have to, slow down at the right time, and so that you don't go below it. it's very hard to get back up if you do. And so, that's, it just takes some discipline and awareness and practice. I think everybody there had thousands of jumps. There were no like new people or anything, but it definitely has a different level of risk than a lot of other things in skydiving.
Okay. All right. So meanwhile, you're opening up a successful practice in Maryland. And,
well, I started out practicing. I joined a group, yeah, and that had already been in practice for a long time.
Okay, and then so when did poker come into the picture?
So I got married, moved to DC, and I would say 2003 maybe. I think the moneymaker thing had happened, obviously, because poker was like all over the internet. And so, I was just watching the news and then saw that come on. And I was like, I've got like a whole Alienware computer set up in the basement that I play games on and stuff. And I'm like, well, this is stupid. I'm playing games for free and I could be playing games and make money. So
quick sidebar, what was your game of choice?
For before poker?
Yeah.
I liked first-person shoot. Like I would say, first-person sneakers. I liked Thief was probably one of my favorite games. But I liked a lot of the ones that are sort of Dungeon and Dragon-esque. Like Arena and that whole series was really awesome. But then I started getting into some of the first-person shooters like Call of Duty and that kind of stuff as that started coming around. But once things got to be console, I was kind of phased out of it by then because I really liked PC-based games better because I just felt like you have this whole keyboard of stuff is a lot easier, and now they have even mini the real gamers. I actually have a gamer keypad that I use for my radiology work just because you can quickly do a lot of the keyboard shortcuts, and it works really well for what I do. But yeah, I was kind of out of it by that point.
Okay, so then you discover, hey, these people are playing for real money.
Yeah, but like nobody knew what was going on back then, right? So there were a few books. There was Super System, and then there was the Sklansky books, and then of course the tournament poker books from Dan.
Harrington on hold.
Harrington's books, right? So I got those, read those, and then there were some books just on cash games that were out, and more started coming out as I started getting into things. So I was just reading all those things and trying to learn, what to do, and started playing online. Like it was Paradise Poker and Full Tilt and Stars. And then, so then my husband at the time and we went up to Atlantic City, did some trips up there and played games, and, that was pretty fun. And somewhere along the way, I stumbled on tournaments, and I was like, whoa, I like this a lot better. Like it's a story, there's like, and it changes throughout the whole thing. It's not just the same all the time where you have the same amount of chips. And then if you lose them, you just buy again and you have the same amount of chips. It's like, this was just so different. And I really liked that. So I started getting into playing charity tournaments around DC. And then eventually we started getting casinos in Maryland. And so I started playing those as well. And WPT had WPT Boot Camp back then. And so I did a couple of those, and that was super helpful. They did a really great job of laying out, a simplified framework that would keep you from getting too much in trouble and basically allow you to be a winning player. And so that was a really great way to be able to have that as the base framework and then build skills from there.
Was there any doctor games going on?
You mean like people hanging out and playing like home games and stuff? There no doubt were. Not that I got invited to. I eventually got maybe 5 or 7 years ago. I had been involved in a home game or two. But when we have casinos, then it hadn't been that much of a thing. But there's some juicy games around DC for sure.
Right. So the casinos come into the picture, and all of a sudden you have something much closer to work, to home. Mm-hmm. Is it true you work a week on, 1 week off kind of thing?
Yeah, I currently do, and I'm actually cutting back. So in April, I'm going to work 1 week on and 2 weeks off, which will let me play more and do some more travel and stuff. So that's my semi-progress towards retirement.
Right. So basically, that's your window to get on the circuit, and you can kind of.
Yeah, it sort of is. Like I want
stops.
to spend more time with my wife and things as well. So I'm not going to just like be on the road all the time and like never be home. But the trouble with 1 week on, 1 week off is that half the time you're working, and then the other half of the time you want to spend time with your spouse who works during the week. And so I end up not playing even the local tournaments as much, just because then it's hard. So this will make all of that a lot easier, and I'm pretty excited about it.
But when was the first time you started taking it a little bit more seriously? You noticed like a shift. Yeah, I know you had some results going back. A lot of local Maryland events at National Harbor, stuff like that. When did you flip the switch, start studying harder? I think you worked with Jonathan Little.
I did some, yeah, and I've worked with Alex Fitzgerald some, but a lot of stuff is I just kept, reading and learning like throughout. More and more books kept coming out, and then websites, started coming out, and and sites you could join and learn from, and I'm kind of a FOMO person when it comes to poker educational materials. So like every time somebody would come out with a new course, I'd get that course, and then just blast through it and, and read it and learn, or a new book would come out. Had to have it and like read it. And, and so, that's, I think one thing that going through med school helps with is just that, you become a very good learner, and you become a pretty disciplined person about being willing to put in the time. But I would say my game really took off when I started working with Ape Styles the most. So there was Elevate was the group that was a smaller group of people that was working with him, and we had some other coaches as well that were part of Elevate. But this
is John Van Fleet, one of the highest earning online players ever.
I think he's the highest earning online player of all time.
He's definitely up there.
Sure. He's amazing, and he's and such an absolutely wonderful human being. So he's a good friend, and so I started working with him back in 2017, and the idea was it was going to grow and be this big site, but it just didn't turn out to be the case because people at that time weren't spending that kind of money. It was like it was like $300 a month, and people were not doing that much then. And so it ended up being a small group of us working with him. And he was doing crazy stuff because, he was like playing 25Ks online and like live streaming on a Zoom thing with us with no delay. So we were watching him stream with just us, and that was the level of trust that he had with us. But, I just learned so much working with him, and just being around top level players and being able to hear their thought process and understand how they think about the game, that like you can't put a price on it. And that's what now when he moved over to BBZ, those of us that had been in Elevate moved over to BBZ as well. And, learning through those coaches really continued the progress in my game, because I think Jordan is amazing, and he is so good at articulating his thought process. Like I could just listen to him talk about poker endlessly because he's so precise in the way that he thinks and talks. And we get amazing ICM training in BBZ as well, and because Yargo is just great. And now they've just recently gotten a whole bunch of new coaches, so there's things are really growing there. But that was a big part of my game taking off for sure.
Yeah, shout out to BBZ and John. I had him on the podcast. Great guy. It's really what separates the top players these days is the ability to do the work away from the table and put in the time, no matter how monotonous or boring it is. And it doesn't have to be, but it is a grind, and obviously you're built for it. So
yeah, it's I think sometimes I think people feel like well, either you're putting in like grinding hours of this, that, or the other thing, or you're not. And it's like it doesn't really have to be that. I was working full time for most of the time that I was learning, and if when people always say like, oh, if you're watching a video, if you're not taking notes, then you're wasting your time, and if you're not doing this, you're wasting your time. It's like, what? You're better off watching a video and trying to be as focused as you can be while you're making dinner than not watching that same video. You're better off watching a video well, like, I have a treadmill with a tabletop that fits over top of the arms of the thing when I want to, watch something while I'm running or walking, and you can do that, and you have to just be flexible and being willing to do what you can do. So if you're somebody who, has a full-time job or you have kids, you're going to have what you have, and you just work with the time and the space that you have to learn.
Right. I think what the problem that comes with poker players is they'd rather be playing than studying. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When they do have the option, it's it's the same with me when I go to the golf course. I'd much
Mm-hmm.
rather be on the course sucking than on the range or on the putting green working on my game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Well, the one thing that helps is the fact that because I play tournaments and I really don't play cash, you can't just like hop on and quick play a tournament. Certainly not on
sure,
ACR, you
yeah.
can't. And so you're either playing a day of tournaments or you're not playing a day of tournaments. So if you don't have a full day to dedicate to it, but you have an hour, you're studying because you don't really have another option unless you're playing sit and goes. And so, which I'll do sometimes, but I'd rather like spend the time learning when I have just piecemeal free time. And then, when I'm playing a tournament, I play a tournament. But I play probably way less than almost anybody you ever have on your podcast, I would say. Because my time is just super limited. I play a couple of games on a couple of days, 2 to 4 days online a month, and then, I'm playing events scattered throughout the year. But way less volume, I'm sure, than so many people that you talk to.
Well, before we get to those events, which you did very well in, I have a quick question. Have you ever taken a picture of your own brain and compared it to a non-poker player's?
Well, when you say picture, you mean MRI probably, but I don't have functional MRI, right?
Yeah.
So like that's what you want is probably like a functional MRI study. But no,
I'm just wondering if you would notice a difference.
nah. I've done an MRI of my brain. It doesn't look too atrophied, so that part's good. Not yet,
Yeah,
anyway.
that's good.
But no, I think that where you see the biggest change in brains between people is meditators and non-meditators. That's where there's been the biggest evidence on that. Is
Interesting.
that people who meditate, and they've done some studies, even looking at people who just do like a mindfulness meditation course for like let's say 8 weeks, or I don't remember what the time frame was, but not super long. And those people end up having more activation in the parts of their brain that deal with happiness than non-meditators do. So there's actually really good, scientific data supporting having a daily meditation practice. That's the only thing that I know of in that. But you can grow parts of your brain. That's another thing that they've looked at as well. So
Interesting. Well, I know a bunch of the top level poker players also practice meditation, so maybe there's some connection there.
yeah, it's certainly very helpful because I think, a lot of obviously you need to know strategy and the more the better, but when it comes to execution in game, having your mindset right is at least as important as strategy in my mind. So meditation is super helpful.
What was it like winning your circuit ring back in 2019?
That was awesome. I had a strategy of, I thought, well, the Iowa event was overlapping with a Vegas circuit event. So my thought was, hey, I'll go there, and in the days before the pros leave Vegas and come to Iowa, there will be fewer of them involved, and maybe I'm more likely to win a ring. That didn't turn out to happen. It turned out that it was in the quote high roller event, which was one of the last events anyway. But it worked out. It was that was like, a super exciting time for me because I didn't set my goal to ever have any particular hardware. That was always like, well, that would be really awesome if it ever happened. But, I just wanted to play well, maybe make it to a final table or two. And, can't really control any of that stuff happening, but that was a trip.
And then obviously in 2021 you upgrade to the bracelet. I mean, by that point,
Yeah.
was it a bucket list item? I mean, you're playing more and.
No, it wasn't at all. My bucket list item at the time that I won the bracelet was just a final table a major. I was like, okay, cool. I won a ring. That was really neat. A bucket list item would be to final table a major tournament, whether that's a WSOP event or a WPT or whatever. But that would be really, really cool because, it's so hard once even at a final table. I mean, I came in as a short stack and won, but you can come in as the big stack and not win too. So it's, there's just a lot of variance, obviously, at that point in the thing. But I really did feel like when I made it to the final table of the ladies event, I was like, you know what, my goal here is already done. I wanted to get to the final table of one of these things. I did. If I bust first, and I'm the shortest already, if I bust first, I've lost nothing. This is what's supposed to happen by the way it is right now. And any extra laddering up is awesome. I'm just gonna see what happens.
That was a pretty tough final table. There were some well-known players there. You said you were the short stack, so you are on a free roll kind of. But yep. I imagine you get to four-handed, three-handed, heads up, and all of a sudden the palms are sweating a little bit. They bring out the bracelet. Was there anything like that?
I really felt like it felt very otherworldly while we were there. Like at first, it was the first time I had been on a live stream thing. So for the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I mostly just didn't want to do something completely stupid that I'd be embarrassed about for the rest of my life. And once that 30 minutes had passed, I was like, all right, I had 30 minutes at least of looking half decent. Now whatever happens, I'll just, go with it. I was just trying so hard to just focus on all the different elements in play that I didn't feel super nervous, honestly. And people were, especially the women that were at that table, were so kind and nice to each other, and it was a really fun group, and that made it just fun. And I was like, I want to enjoy this, and I felt the same way going into the WPT event. It was just like, these guys are all really good. I want to just have a really good time, because who the hell knows if I'll ever be at another WPT final table. Hopefully I will be, but this could be it, and I want to enjoy every minute of it, and I did. So
real quick before WPT, where do you keep the bracelet?
Oh, I have it on the shelf in my office.
Okay, so your patients get to see it.
Well, I'm a radiologist, so my patients don't get to see me. Oh,
that's true.
Let alone my bracelet.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. No, my office is in my house, so I work out of my house. So I get up at 4:30 in the morning and make a cup of coffee and walk across the hall, and that's my commute.
There you go. That's the dream.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this December, you head over to the win for the WPT Prime Championship. Finished runner-up for $481,000. And, I mean, 5,430 entrants. That's just massive. What's it like navigating through a field like that?
It was pretty crazy. I mean, I've been in fields like that. I mean, I've played in the main event several times, but, which has been bigger. But it's still, it's a massive event, obviously. And the thing is that it overshot the WPT's expectations by so much that was part of the issue, is that there was sort of this weird bubble thing that would happen. Because if you busted in one of the day ones, you were often looking at 2 hours to get back in. At which point it was going to be a very different level when you busted out, which was a problem. And so it was the fifth bullet that I made it on, and I almost didn't fire it because I was like, I busted out, and I was like, man, this is going to be a mess. And I went to the cage, and I was like, hey, right now I'd be coming in with 25 bigs or something, or maybe it was 30 at the time, but about to go to 25. And I was like, what number are you guys on right now for alternates? They're like, well, we're on 600, and I was like, or 700 or something. I was like, what number would I be? They're like, 1,200.
Oh my God.
I was like, holy cow, whatever it was hundreds of people away. And I was like, man, this just feels dumb. I'm just going to throw $1,100 in the trash right now. But I was like, and there was another event going on at some other place right across the street where you could win a trip to some Caribbean place. I was like, maybe I'll go over there and just fire something at that or do something different. But that involves a whole nother change of venue and everything else. And it's it's going to be at least 2 hours. I'm going to come in with less than 20 bigs. I think I came in with 17 bigs or something. And I was like, I don't know. And this guy standing there, it's like, dude, it's $5 million prize pool. Yeah, you're right. What the hell? So, so I registered, take my thing, and I just went to dinner. And just hung out, came back and still wasn't up, and hung around for a while, and then eventually got in super short. Well, not super short, but good, and that's where it's like good to have been doing a lot of late registering online and used to coming in, at that point, because sometimes you come in, like if you've been waiting too long, people get in and they're just like anxious to double up and like looking for a spot where they're just going to ship their chips, and I hung around short for hours before I finally had an opportunity to build the stack up. So
did you watch the live stream back?
Oh yeah. So my wife had been there, and Ape Styles was there too, and other friends, including a friend Pat, who had flown in from California to support me, which was amazing. But yeah, so my wife was obviously super excited, and then the people who were still hanging around at 12:30 when we finally finished, I took folks and we went and got drinks and a bite to eat and stuff like that. But then when we got to the room to pack to leave the next day, my wife wanted to. We watched a little bit of it, and then we watched them in the morning. And because you're curious, especially because even she's there, but she wasn't watching the delay stream like my friend Pat was. So it's like you don't know what's actually happened a lot of times. You want to check it out and see what people were saying.
Any regrets based on what you saw?
I think there's certain things that I think were clearly mistakes. Sometimes you're in the moment and you're doing the best that you can in a reasonable time frame. And also when you can see the hands, obviously, like I had the hand with Georgie where I had aces, is a spot where, traditionally with top set, you often will just check back the flop, but I decided to just bet small. And then on the turn, I really should have sized up and didn't, which kind of forced him to call, but he would have called anyway. And the outcome would have been the same. But he would have hit his, I only got bailed out because he hit his flush when I made a boat, obviously. So I would have checked back anyway, but that was a mistake. And then I also think I had a hand with Young Un where I had trip kings, and he had trip kings, and which became a boat. And
right, that was a real cooler.
But I mean, like if you think about it, there you're sort of like, can you get away from that? Like trip kings with the worst possible kicker, maybe.
Oh.
I think in retrospect, I think that the hands, I've thought through a lot of the hands that were heads up hands, which, you kind of go like, well, really, what's he raising you with here and blah, blah, blah. But you're like, it's so hard when you're heads up and you have two pair and there's, he could beat you with sets, but you're blocking, half of those. And there's one straight, it's really hard to get away from, things like boats and all this stuff in your heads up. So.
It seemed like the deck didn't want you to win at the end, given.
Yeah, I got kind of, but I got my share for sure. Like, ace queen against ace queen, and I win with the flush, and that was nuts, so that shouldn't have been mine either. And then you got to win your flips, and I had my share of those too. So I really can't complain. And it's like, who cares if you do complain anyway? It's just your variance is your variance. But but I mean, I think there's definitely things that were mainly like sizing mistakes or things where maybe when I was chip lead, I could have been more aggressive in certain spots and just open jammed some spots and some things like that. But
well, congrats to Steven Song. He won the event, $712,000. He'll be on this show shortly. You took home $481,000. Does that change your life at all? I mean, obviously you're a successful doctor. You got, I don't think you're hurting too badly, but
no. The big thing I wanted to do was to be able to. I decided in advance I was going to give 10% of my net winnings to charity, and so I was able to give $30,000 to help Ukraine. So I split that between two charities, and in both instances it was matched, so that 30 turned into 60, which was really cool. So that went like directly towards ambulances in Ukraine, as well as to World Central Kitchen, which helps supply food and meals to people on the ground. And that felt amazing. And that's, what I kind of want to do going forward is to, be able to turn, net profits into charitable donations. And then
be the next Barry Greenstein.
Exactly. So so that was really awesome. And then planning a trip with my wife somewhere. We're going to figure out where to go, as a little thing for us. And then a lot of it just, went into the bankroll to, the good times won't keep rolling endlessly. So.
Well, I'm definitely rooting for you anytime I see you at an event.
Thank you.
Let me finish the podcast with some rapid fire questions if you're ready.
Okay.
Okay. What was the biggest shot you ever took?
Well, I guess it'd be the main event, but that was several times on that.
How did it work out? Any
I have
success
never
stories
cashed the main
there?
event, not once. I've come close. I've never been the bubble, but my signature has usually been making it to late on day 3 and busting before the money.
What is your most prized possession?
It depends on the definition of possession. I'm not a very materialistic person, but I would say my relationship with my wife, but that's not really a possession. But I don't bring that much to stuff. Yeah.
The first thing you would take out in a fire? The relationship with the wife, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I'd take my wife out.
Um, let's see here. What about swaps? You ever swap with anybody? Anybody ever come through with a big piece?
Not huge, but I've done swaps with people here and there, especially locally. And then I've sold action to a bunch of different things. I had sold action to the ladies' event, in fact, so that turned into a decent thing for those guys as well as me.
If you could download one skill instantly, like in the Matrix, what would you choose?
For poker, it would be charts. Pre and post flop charts for sure.
What if you just memorized all those charts, huh? You just knew
it's pretty
them
tough.
all.
Yeah, well, with Preflop Academy, you can go pretty far with the pre-flop stuff. Post-flop stuff, it's hard to become a GTO wizard.
Yeah, the tree gets pretty big, branchy at that point.
Mm-hmm.
What was your largest non-poker wager?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think it would be super big. Can't think of stuff that I've gambled on all that much. It's going to be something small, like $100 on a game or something like that. Nothing.
Sports bet?
Yeah, probably something like that.
All right. What about the worst job you ever had?
Well, I've really only had one job, and that's being a radiologist.
You didn't have any summer jobs as a teen?
Well, I worked for my dad, actually, who was an orthodontist, but I wouldn't say it was a bad job. And then once I was in college, I was just full-time into studying college and med school.
What did you have to do for dad? Was it just paperwork or?
No, I assisted him. So he was an orthodontist, so he trained me to be an assistant, hand him instruments, and do that kind of stuff. And so I did that to make some money on the side.
Man, no wonder you were always so driven. You were right up there in the front lines from day one.
Well, I was pretty lucky to come from a family that was able to support me and take care of my school expenses. So I didn't have to try to balance a job with going to college and med school. So that was my good fortune, basically.
Any nicknames?
Well, I used to wear a hat playing poker, so I had been Hat Lady for a little bit, but that was a long time ago.
Hat Lady?
Oh, the guy had a goofy poker hat I used to wear. So I was, in the beginning, I was so tight because I was nervous and I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, well, this will make me look like I'm kind of fun and splashy. So I picked up this goofy hat when I was up at the Tropicana, but that was a long time ago. I don't think I have any nicknames now that I am aware of, anyway.
I'm just laughing at the complete unoriginality of Hat Lady.
Which is better than Cat Lady, which I'm not.
Yeah, that's true. You just hoard a bunch of hats.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
You're drowning in hats at your house. Headphones on the table, yes or no?
I don't wear headphones on the table typically, no. I very much am a believer in the importance of tells and people. I'm a big Beyond Tells fan. Blake Eastman's work is really great, and that's been very helpful to me. And you got to be paying attention. I think that's one of the biggest edges to be had right now is that, with TikTok and all the rest of the stuff, people can't pay attention to what's happening at the table for 5 seconds at a time. A lot of people. So if you just stop at any point and ask somebody, hey, what happened last hand? Most people have no idea. They're not paying that much attention if they weren't in the hand. So, trying to work on your focus and paying attention at the table And music just distracts me. I'm sure for some people it probably gets them in a zone and keeps them focused. It doesn't work that way for me, but.
Do you have a favorite musician or band?
I'd say lots of different. I like a lot of different folk stuff. I like a lot of stuff from 60s and 70s, kind of stuff. And then my wife tries to get me a little more current. I'm starting to become old with like in 60s and 70s stuff. But yeah, I like all kinds of different stuff.
If you could name the entertainment for the Super Bowl halftime show, who would you choose?
Oh man.
And you do not have to please people. It's for you.
Oh wow. Well, I mean, it would probably be like the Grateful Dead or somebody, because I don't care if anybody else liked it, but bring Jerry back and bring them all out and
not with John Mayer.
That's it, right?
Who was your celebrity crush growing up?
Oh, man, I don't know. I mean, there was when you're like 6th or 7th grade, you're like into like the boy band kind of stuff. I think that was like so long ago in my past. So, yeah, I don't know. That's tough.
Okay. Are you superstitious at all?
Not really. No, I used to be a little bit when I was playing pool, like on certain things, but for poker, I'm really not. Like, I do believe in the power of routines, but not because I think there's like magic involved in it. It's just that I know that having routines is, helpful to put you in a good frame of mind, but not outside of that.
Do you have a celebrity doppelganger, or growing up, did people tell you look like somebody?
No, well, not till I cut my hair short. So now I get Tig Notaro. A little bit, I get Trinity from The Matrix.
Oh, wow. Carrie-Anne Moss, Tig Notaro.
Yeah, that's a great one to have. I'll take Carrie-Anne Moss lookalike anytime. But
you don't like Tig? Tig's hilarious.
No, Tig. I love Tig too. She's great. But yeah, no, I dressed up as Trinity for Halloween a bunch of times. But I think those are the two main doppelganger things I get.
Those are cool. Where's the most beautiful place you've ever seen in person?
Well, I'll say the Bahamas, where I just got back from, was unbelievable. I've never seen so many different colors of blue in the water. But I took a trip to Spain with my wife a couple years ago, and I set us up to go hiking in the Pyrenees at this place, which was ridiculous. We were staying for like $100 a night in this like incredible place, and you looked out and you felt like you were in the scene of like Heidi the musical or something. We did this 12-mile hike up this unbelievably gorgeous valley, that just like a path that went along this like babbling brook and up into the mountains, and it was just spectacular. So that was gorgeous.
You lost me at 12 miles.
Yeah, we were very happy we had a hot tub in our room to soak in when we got back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something. So I've been there's so many amazing places in the world that are just so beautiful in different ways. But I definitely recommend the Bahamas. Like, I might check out PCA next year, because that was something else.
Yeah, I had many January spent at the PCA, and it's a little chilly, but if you catch it on the right day, it's nice.
A little bit chilly?
A little chilly in January.
Like cold temperature wise, really?
Yeah, it could drop a little bit, but not too bad.
Fair enough.
I'm sure for you in Maryland, it's very
well. It was
warm.
Like high 70s when we were just there, so we weren't hot, but it was like it was nice because you weren't like running around sweating all the time. It was just kind of comfy.
Do you have any phobias?
Only maybe jellyfish. Like, I'm not a fan. I mean, it's not so phobic. Like, I can't go out of my house if I'm worried about jellyfish. But I've done a bunch of scuba diving, and I had one like slight, almost panic attack, realizing I was kind of like surrounded by jellyfish everywhere. That was weird. But like, I'm fine with sharks, but the jellyfish for some reason just freak me out. They're hard to see.
It would have been weird if you'd said heights.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been good.
Do you collect anything? So you're not materialistic.
Yeah,
Do you have like
really.
A collection of anything?
No. I like getting rid of things. That's a hobby.
Purging.
Exactly.
All right. Do you like telling people that you play poker?
Well, Not necessarily, I guess I would say. I mean,
It depends on what kind of social circles you're running in, you know?
I mean, I don't run around talking about myself too much, or try not to anyway. But I had to give a deposition. I do some medical malpractice legal work, defense work, and I was giving a deposition and had an attorney who had Googled me and was trying to bring poker into the deposition as basically trying to imply that I was not a trustworthy person because part of poker is bluffing and isn't bluffing lying. And so we had to go round and round on that one for a little bit till we sorted that out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. But
Your Honor, she's a liar. I saw her once check
she
raise
bluffed.
on a draw. It was a semi lie if you want to be technical.
All she had was a gut shot. It was all BS. But but no, I mean, I think it's, people outside of poker don't understand poker for sure. And people like, my own parents, I mean, had to understand that it's not like you're this gambling addict and you're on this slippery slope and you're going to be broke and destitute. So it's having a couple decent wins helps alleviate people's fears about that stuff.
We end the podcast the same way every time, with a question from the random question generator.
All right.
Because those questions weren't random enough. Do you have any unusual traditions?
Unusual traditions? No, not really. My wife converted to Judaism, so we started paying more attention to some of the Jewish holidays than I had before. But yeah, not really. I'm so boring.
I could do another one if you want.
Sure.
Okay. What talent? We already did something similar to that. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
I wanted to be a mother, an astronaut, and a doctor.
Oh, right. Well,
so I became an aunt and a skydiver and a doctor. So
I was about to say, skydiving is pretty close to being an astronaut. I mean,
it's about as close as you can guarantee you can get. Astronaut's pretty hard to hit. Although I had one very brief thing that was funny, which was we were doing the 300-way world records in Arizona, and there was a woman who was on the load who was a real astronaut. She had been one of the space shuttle astronauts. And there was a guy doing the announcing as we were all coming into land at various times. And I happened to be one of the first people landing, and I landed, and I hear this guy, Dusty, saying, "Give her a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mary Ellen Weber, the astronaut." And I turned, and I just bowed. I was like, That was my 5 minutes of fame as an astronaut. And that was
mistaken identity.
Exactly. I'll take it.
That's awesome. Well, Lara, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing the stories.
This was really fun talking to you.
That's it. That is the show. Thank you once again to Lara for sharing the stories. She wanted to shout out Preflop Academy and BBZ Poker Training, so be sure to check those out if you want to learn like she does. You can find her on Twitter at Eisen009, and you can find us on Twitter at CardPlayerMedia. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review, and all the other good stuff. Until next time, thanks for listening.